Progeny, and welcome to another The More You Know podcast with the voice.
And the felly.
Today we're going to talk about history, and this will be actually an interesting chat today, as we do have a surprise for everyone waiting in the shadows. So this is going to be an exciting podcast.
I know things. I know random things. Like I drink and I know things. Like, did you know that Bloody Mary wasn't always called Bloody Mary? First, the popular drink was called like a bucket of blood. After bucket of blood, it transitioned to red snapper. And finally, they settled on Bloody Mary.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that was a good little tidbit. I had no clue. Well, that's great, Felly, and you do know a lot of things.
I know
But
things.
I know, you know things. So, today we're going to be talking about progeny history. And
Oh,
Felly, as much as we always try to stay in our roles, some of this history may contain words that are out of character and more in our modern day languages, as it is the only way to make what we're saying make sense. So, our apologies in advance to the realm. So let us go back in time. As we all know, a vampire's memories do fade, but I also know there are some memories that linger. As you know, they've had some impact on the path that vampires take, and it brings us to where we are in this time and place.
oh, this is going to be fun and amazing.
Right on. So, Felly, are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's
All
do it.
right, so let's talk about. We did talk to the source, and we asked the source some questions. So I just want to let everybody know, just keep in mind that these responses are from our source as his direct words as he conveyed them to us. So we all know that our source, who's been around forever, created this realm in 2009. But I can tell you that originally he was in Bloodlines. So he became tired of that system, making him feel like a blood-sucking panhandler and hanging out in the popular areas and public areas and going up to people and saying, "Hey, can I bite you? I'm just a poor homeless vampire and I need some blood." So our source started thinking about how he could really be a true vampire and roleplay it his way. So he began to create Progeny Vampire. He realized early on, though, that sadly he couldn't really play his own creation as devil because he wielded way too much power, and everyone, and I mean everyone, would want to be sired by
Everyone.
him. Yep, everyone. And that just would not work. So once he started laying out his plans for the new creation, he realized he needed to choose a name for himself. And of all the names that he could have chosen for himself, he really liked the name The Source, in honor of the TV show Charmed. Now, the source is a devil, not a demon, everybody. So, demons are chaotic evil, and devils are lawful evil. So, he believes in freedom, but he also believes in order.
Yes. And he, like many of us, had a huge crush on Alyssa Milano. I think I still do, matter of fact. So
You do.
we asked him about the very first bite in Progeny. He started off saying that his memories of the early days are somewhat fuzzy, but the very first bite was a fiasco. Dark Nymphia introduced him to a Bloodlines vampire. Her name has been long forgotten now. But anyway, she was a clan leader in Bloodlines and had a fairly decent following.
Oh,
And she was slated to become the very first Arch and seemed really happy and enthusiastic about the system. But the deal was she was supposed to assist with the testing. And in the very first test of the bite script, the source says he bit her and she went completely nuts, saying she didn't consent and just went on and on and on. And apparently, in that other realm she came from, they had some strange customs of asking for permission to bite. And she just screamed at him and screamed at him as he was just licking his fangs for like what seemed a long time. So he finally just had enough and got rid of her and set her free back to the other realm of begging for food. And he deleted her from the database, trying his best to forget her very existence. He still doesn't remember her name. And apparently, she might be the second most toxic person that was in the history of Progeny.
Oh, wow. That is a great tale of the first bite. Wow. That is interesting. So there was some bumpy roads, and there seems to be a pattern with some of that that came from the other realm. So let's talk about some firsts. The first vampire was Dart Nymphaea, followed by Nestus Ruby on the same day. The source remembers that date to be November 1st, 2009. And the first house of record is Soph Internal. Now, my tongue doesn't twist that way, guys, so if I said it wrong, well,
What was the name of that house again?
Soph Eternel.
Got it.
Got it?
Go ahead.
Okay, here we
Got
go.
it.
All right. So, also, those were the first sovereigns, and then later on, they were the first arches. He was thinking that Nestus was first, followed by Dark in just a few hours. We then asked the source who was the first diabolic, and to quote him, our Aperion Oberon, Superdexing, Pyrrhus Noel, and Saint Quisty were the first diabolics ever in Progeny. He recalls Oberon and Super underwent apotheosis on the same day, but he does not recall which was first and can't remember if Tyrrhus and Saint joined them that day or later. But he thinks it was a month or two later. Well, maybe our surprise guest today can answer that question for us.
Yes, maybe so. Well, you know what I wanted to know? I wanted to know who was the first to truly anger our source that earned his wrath. And he said, truly anger me? There's only been a few, and it would be tempting to say Fides, who has run afoul of my temper a few times over our history. But in truth, she never made me furious, just annoyed till all hell and back. No, I would say that honor goes to Nash. That guy went on a smear campaign against me, including spoofing my look, trying to imitate me. He went on to say that the guy was harassing people and just a whole bunch of drama, all because he was given a timeout. So that makes actually the source laugh now, but that guy was probably the only one to truly anger the source, though a few have come close over the years. That's probably the other one that was truly toxic.
Oh, wow. Well, our source is really creative, and he has really created a great, wonderful world for us that many try to mimic and steal from, of course. But they don't have our progeny community of people, and this amazing community really wants to keep us going. Let's talk about the tools of the trade. Our first magical item, and maybe our special guest can correct me if we're wrong on any of this. The first magical item he made for us would be the potency stone, not the crystal. It was a newer version of the item using the same prim is still in use, but the script of it has been rebuilt a number of times. And after that was the Vampire Revival Altar. Now, the original version was built by the source, but later Beth Dark Matter, Superdexing, and Tyrrhus Noel and others created their own builds of altars and gave versions to be integrated with the scripts. So it remains the only progeny object with multiple users, multiple versions being used.
Oh, okay, that's pretty cool. We also asked what some early creations were that we no longer see. And there's the original and first versions of our HUDs. They had a fatal flaw in them, but we had too much strength. And some members were able to double or bite and drain their targets way too fast. And the source had to put a stop to that. He never really had an item that didn't completely work, but he did say he had regrets that the hibernation kiosk was to be more and was never completed the way he wanted it to be. The current hibernation kiosk was created as part of a larger system that allowed a mummified form to represent a hibernating vampire to be visible. This would have allowed followers of that vampire to feed them and to keep them undead and keep them aging. It was a really cool build, he said, but he never got back to it. Perhaps, he said, maybe in the next magical explosion. That and the enshrined cemetery monuments. He wanted to get both of those done. But there's a lot going on that are a greater priority at the moment.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we have a few things a little higher on the list. So, Felly, the source told us that if we wanted to dig more into our history, we was to contact our Aperion. So, we have a surprise for you all today, folks. We'd like to welcome our surprise guest, Aperion Oberon, to The More You Know. And we are very happy to have you with us, our Aperion. And how are you this evening?
Well, I'm all the better for your asking. That's one of my trademark sayings. And I'm very happy to be here and listening to the history that you guys were just talking about. There are a few minor changes to that. Um, as many people are aware, I was in the 20s of the individuals turned into progeny vampire. And how that came about was through Fidesz. Fidesz was my sire. She came to me one day because she knew that I was not happy with that other system that Ravensclaw started in, because it was strictly about making money. And we decided that that was not something that we wanted to do. And Fidesz introduced me to, she came up to me one day and she said, you know, we've got this new system and you really have to look at it. You really have to take a look at it. And I said, okay, let's try it. And so she embraced me. And I saw what it had to offer. And I realized it was in its rough originating stages by Lachille. And I said, okay, well, I need to embrace somebody else in order to make it functional from my perspective as the leader of Ravensclaw. And that very first person that I turned happened to be Ledge, who was
Oh,
eventually the future Arch of Ravensclaw. Now,
wow.
Oh, wow.
during all of that time that we were experimenting with uh, Progeny, we were still operating Ravensclaw under that other system, which it's still a part of, but we're not really active, even though we are the second oldest clan in that particular system, Celebi. Anyway, my entire focus with regard to vampirism and everything that's involved with it is 99.9% progeny. The other ones I look at, but they hold no interest for me because every now and again I do a comparison of the differences between progeny and the other systems that are out there. And I can find no real comparison other than people trying to imitate us.
Right?
Progeny has developed a community over the years, which works quite well and does the job that we wanted to do at this point in time. Our next big project, just so that I can make people aware, and I'm probably jumping ahead of the gun at the moment, but I'm going to do that anyway because I can
And
do
that's
that.
fine.
Yes, you can.
It, it is, it is called SLARP. And we want role play to be a major factor within the system. And even though there are some folks out there that do not wish to participate in an SLARP or a role play system, that's fine. Uh, the beauty of Progeny is that we are all free to do pretty much as we wish.
Right.
Uh, and that's what makes it so much nicer.
Well, you know what?
Now,
Some people they like to say that they don't role play or things like that, but the minute that they actually are embraced, and even if they just say, "Oh, you're my sire," or "You're my clan leader," or something like that, any of that, even if it's in its minor form, is actually role play.
that is correct. And that's what makes it fun. Anyway, back to the original Diabolics and how we all wound up being Diabolics. Originally, I was an arch, And Superdexing was my second in command of Ravensclaw at that point in time. St. Questy was third in command. And at that point in time, we brought Parthenia Church into the system. Parthenia and I spoke for many, many hours, and I probably still have the note cards regarding this, about a legal system for progeny, which has since turned into the PLS. And I know one of the questions in many people's mind is, what happened to the marshals?
Mm-hmm.
The marshals are now the knights.
Okay.
Okay, so that was how they morphed. The metamorphosis of the marshals turned into the knights because the marshals became exceedingly controversial to a large number of the population. And we decided that rather than have a police force, we wanted to develop something that could enhance the RP throughout the system. And with the assistance of Diabolic Cassie and Ancillary Diabolic Liz, the PLS was formed. The original person who was involved in assisting in the formation of the PLS was Plasma Atreides.
Mm-hmm.
And Plasma is still somewhat in the system, but he doesn't get involved in any of those legalities any longer, which is unfortunate because he is an extremely intelligent individual.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always enjoyed speaking with him. And on that note, how did we become Diabolics? Oh, that was a fascinating time.
Do you remember
because
the day you were turned to a diabolic, or?
Oh, yes, but prior to that, because I was engaging in a active war with Fidesz,
Mm-hmm.
I was delayed in my turning into being a diabolic. That's why superdexing was number one.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay, because as long as I was conducting a war within the system, I couldn't exactly become a diabolic because I was the archer of a bloodline and Fidesz was the archer of a bloodline, and the two of us had our difference of opinion.
Right. So she was your original sire,
Correct.
but then, and so you end up gauging war upon her. That must have been some trying times.
Yes, but it was all in the spirit of role play, which is what I
Right.
like to bring forth. Because even though Fidesz and I had our differences of opinion, we could still talk on the side and still remain friends. Even to this day, every now and again, I still talk with Fidesz.
Oh, nice.
It's like Michael Gahn, for instance. Michael Gahn was a member of Ravensclaw before Progeny, and then there's a number of folks who were members of Ravensclaw who didn't like the idea of Progeny and they wanted to stay in the other system and whatnot. So that's why I maintained the other system. I have one of their amulets that allow me never to have to feed and all that wonderful stuff, and that's something that doesn't occur in Progeny. We are not in it for the money.
Absolutely
which is,
not.
which is the beauty of it. I mean, Progeny currently at this point in time consists of 13 sims. Of those 13 sims, I am one of the principal owners, and an
Oh,
avatar
wow.
named Grave Designs is the other principal owner, which happens to be the source. And trust me, you don't want to see my credit card bills at the end of the month.
Oh no. So are you the original builder of the castle?
No, I am not. No, I am not. The architect behind the Grave Design Sims is Cassie and Liz.
Even all the way back then for the first castle?
No, the first castle actually was put together by Super.
Yeah, I think it was Super and Tiris.
Yeah, Tiris was very, very much involved at that point in time with the building. My building abilities consisted of shopping, finding a res box, and resing it out.
Oh my God. Oh my.
I mean, the museum on the Great Design Sim is one of those edifices that was manufactured in 2007. And it is still in use today by myself, and I believe it is on Soraya's Sim as well.
Yes.
Heavily modified by me.
Yeah, we've done a lot of modifications.
It may not be recognizable. So in that war, there were some bounties that you mentioned that war. But there were some bounties. Was any of those bounties ever collected?
I paid out the one for Raid Plasma's head.
Nice.
Well, do you remember who was the first to die in that war, or how did it end?
I honestly do not, but it finally ended with Fidesz and I deciding that enough was enough.
Did it go on for a long time?
About a month.
Okay, not too bad.
No, wasn't too bad at all. And that's when I became a diabolic, and it worked out well.
I've got to ask this question. Out of all of the people that we've encountered, because I've known you since 2011, and I've seen some people really push your buttons, and I've probably done it a few times myself. Who was the one person that really, really made you mad to the point that you dusted them?
In all honesty, I can honestly say that no one has ever made me that mad. The actions by which some people have taken within the system are what have made me mad at them, not at me personally. It's you can call me any name you want in the book, and it's just going to bounce off of me. I could care less. It's when people out there decide to rank on other individuals and get very prejudicial towards them. That's what rankles me. I listen, which is something I wish more people would do. You have to stop and listen to all sides of any given situation and make your decisions based on the evidence, not on the emotion.
Right. I mean, actually, that's wonderful that you say that because it is true. And you live by that because very early on, when I was a baby vampire, I bit in front of you. I did not see you on that sim. And I was in the middle of a fight and TP'd out to fix my HUD and came back. And you were there, but I didn't see you. And I latched onto this guy and was just biting away. All of a sudden, my little message went off and it was you. I was like, why is he messaging me? And you were like, you do know, biting in front of me certainly means, certain death. And I was like, where are you? And I was like, why are you here? And I was like, I am so sorry. I didn't know. And I owned it and I was apologetic. And I think you were okay with that because I never got dusted for it.
No, you didn't get dusted. Actually, I filled you up.
Yeah. I was like, wow, this is amazing.
Well, it's really funny. You know, our Aperion does have a lot of patience. I remember back in the early days, 2012, that we would go into our meetings, and that's when our diabolics actually, they were over our meetings, and I routinely got dusted in those meetings. It was repetitive by Super and Tyrus, and it was always our Aperion that had to come in and bring me back. Always, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm gonna survive in Progeny," and, but I've made it this far, so, I've managed not to get dusted by our Aperions. I think I've been pretty fortunate myself.
Well, Soraya, you mentioned the meeting. So when did it become a thing that how did the GCSC and the COH evolve to what it is today? Like back in the day, it was just everybody getting together to talk about the realm. But when did it become that it would do policy for the realm and have rules and policies for us?
Okay, that's a good question. The GCSC, which is the for the sovereign clans, is modeled very loosely after the US Senate or the House of Lords and Parliament in England and that sort of thing. The COH is modeled after the US Congress, and with those particular thoughts in mind, but not to go following those exactly because we don't want to get into national politics with regard to how Progeny actually functions. It's was created as an RP so that the original design was that the COH is supposed to come up with what the Council of Houses, which would have been the majority of people who are involved, or avatars, for lack of a better word, so that they could come up with ideas as to what they would like to see enacted into the so-called laws that govern the system. The GCSE was then supposed to take that information and decide whether or not those should become laws. Now, at one time, yes, it was the source, it was the diabolics that were chairing the sessions. And we decided that we didn't wish to be involved in the politics of the system. So therefore, we needed to step aside.
Okay.
And that's when initially, if I remember correctly, I believe the chairs were elected by the GCSE and by the COH, but there was a distinct lack of interest in people in doing that. So that's when we decided that, oh, which faction of the vampire system does not really participate as much as we would like to see them? Guess who? The archers.
Right.
So that's when, in the Diabolic Conclave, Lachille and the rest of us decided that, yes, this is a good time for the archers to step up to the plate and do something other than just awarding clans.
Right.
And it also allowed for the archers to create the RP. And for the most part, they do a pretty good job. Yes, granted, we have time zones all over the world, which interfere with how some things function, because I believe the majority of the system at this point in time is English speaking, and this goes for England, the United States, Hawaii, which is a specific time zone that doesn't always allow for the Spanish speaking community to be a part of because they're in a completely different time zone. So, with trying to keep everything in mind as to how things function around the world, is how we in the Diabolic Conclave try to foment the system to function. And trust me, it's not easy.
Yeah, I imagine not. It is difficult to manage so many different factions and time zones and things like that. I am curious about something. I remember back in the day that in 2011, 2012, 2013, things like that, the arches, whenever they issued clans and houses, there were charters, and so there were limits to it. I know that we go through the AC now to apply for clans and things like that. Do you think that we'll ever go back to something similar to that? Or do you think we will stick to our process, the transition that we've made now into the AC to granting clans and things like that?
All right, time for another history lesson.
That's what we're here for.
The original thoughts behind clans and arches was that there was never supposed to be more than 6 arches. And Lachille had originally wanted no more than 3 clans per arch. yours truly needed to have a fourth. So he granted me and the other archers at the time the ability to have 4 clans each. Houses were entirely up to the clan sovereigns, had nothing to do with the arch or anything else. And archers technically were not supposed to be clan sovereigns. So that kind of got out of hand. And then we had more archers, and then we had more clans. And I have to admit that I'm the one in the background who has been holding off on wholesale admissions of archers and new bloodlines and all of that. Was strictly leading away from the original thoughts on the design of the system. And now with the advent of therianthropes coming on board and a few other things coming on board, some of which will remain nameless at the moment, the idea of expanding more arches and more bloodlines, it starts to get extremely problematic. So right now we have a moratorium on the granting of any more bloodlines. There are certain issues regarding this being discussed in the Diabolic Conclave now, but nothing that I'm going to reveal at this point in time.
Oh, I understand. I can imagine it's a chore at this point to try to regulate that many. I mean, we have lots of clans, a ton of houses. Um, I can only imagine um, how many times you get asked, can I be an arch? I'm sure you
Many,
get asked
many,
that.
many.
I've talked to quite a few people. They're pretty hell bent on, I would love to be an arch.
And the same question goes with I'd love to be a diabolic. How do I become a diabolic?
Yes.
I mean, I think you get more role play and whatnot as a clan leader, or even less than, um, as far as titles go. I think you get to do more role play and more things that you're able to do as clan sovereigns, as house leaders. There's more things you can do. Archers don't get to do as much as people think.
Very true.
No, they really don't. I kind of want to change the pace here. It's kind of like a
Yeah.
getting off the topic a little bit here. Um, so I remember back in the day that out on the outer edges of hell, um, we had folks that love to call themselves outlaws, renegades, and rogues. They all had to have a different title. Was this always a problem? Did we always have a problem with the renegades and the rogues? When did you guys actually decide that y'all wanted to make them a thing in Progeny?
Well, as you all know, in most cases, majority rules. Uh, and when we were petitioned by a large number of vampires to who did not wish to show their allegiance to their original bloodlines, uh, and also the ones who didn't wish to behave, we needed to have various factions within the systems. Now, how do I think of things personally? There are GCSC members and there are renegades. Those are the two factions that I subscribe to, so to speak. The renegades, as far as I'm concerned, do have a voice in the system, and I am of the opinion that they should be allowed to participate in the GCSC if they choose to. Now, the PLS, where the judges are the archers, and they're the ones that we would like to have make the rulings based upon the individuals bringing cases before the PLS. The Diabolics wish to remain neutral in all of this.
Well, one of those things that I think people also think in error, and you can correct me at any moment, is that renegades have a mindset that they don't have to follow laws. They say they don't believe in the GCSC, but that's just they're not using their voice to try to change things. And I equate it to I may not believe in banks, but doesn't mean I can go out and rob one.
Good way to think of it. I like that
So
analogy.
so, just because you don't believe in a law doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Correct. It's sort of like the folks who think they're sovereign citizens and they don't have to adhere to the laws. Okay, I'm traveling. Yes, well, in my state, you're driving, and you
Exactly.
must have a license.
Right. Exactly. So do you remember who was the first to like maybe outcast, or was it I guess it was like really big news back then, right?
Well, the original premise behind Outcast was when a clan leader or a house
Mhm.
leader decided that a vampire within their house slash clan was being an obtuse jerk and was attacking people, or they had some reason to believe that they were being miscreants, should be outcast. And that is how outcasting started. Now, renegades are a whole different faction. Renegades are the ones that do not wish to subscribe to the GCSC or the Arch, who is lording over their particular bloodline. And we leave that up to the Arches to decide. That's not up to us.
Well, I remember a few years ago when you announced us all renegades are back in the GCSE.
Correct.
And I was one of those people that I paid attention, I stayed up in the rafters, but I was like, "Oh wow, I can come in and now fight the system from within the system." Because
Correct.
I still consider myself to be renegade, but I tend to try to fight the system from within the system.
That's perfect role play, in my opinion.
Yeah, so that's why, I was like, okay. But I absolutely loved it when when you made that announcement. That was gosh, just a few years ago at a meeting. You were like, and then you were like, okay, I'm out. And then we were all like, what? What happened? What just happened?
Well, exactly. And you talk about renegades and outcasts and everything. And I'm going to say this. During the early days, when I came in, I had an arch. And, like, our Aperion said, there were some people that there was clashes with the arches. We did not recognize our arch. We went on to be rogues and grew quite large fairly quickly. And, we ended up back in the system with a clan, hoping to have a voice to help progress the system further. So being out in the outer edges of hell, it's an interesting place to be, but your motivations and what you're setting out to do is either to make progeny progress forward and be a voice, or you're there to destroy. And in our case, I was very, very happy to come back into the GCSC and become a part of a whole lot larger, bigger picture. I actually think that I don't know if it was our house or if it was Resdia's house that, well, we were the first clan, actual rogues that were offered a clan. I think, am I correct?
I believe so.
I think that's how, I don't think it was Resdia.
Well, which now the rogues, if a rogue has enough, a rogue house has enough members, they can actually get an arch to back them and put in an application for a clan.
Yeah, we weren't that fortunate
How
back
far
then.
we've come, how far
Yeah,
we've
yeah,
come, right,
yeah,
Soraya?
yeah, because we weren't that fortunate.
Now, we touched a little bit on meetings and the COH and GCSE. Um, there have been many awesome moments, like the one that you announced that Renegades were back in, and I can think of another one where Diabolic Antonia spooned out an eye of somebody. Do you happen to have a favorite meeting moment or two?
Huh. Good question. Meetings out there. Well, I guess it was one that I didn't even say a word in.
Oh.
It was when uh, Super Saint and Tyrus gave Lachille an ultimatum.
Oh, goodness.
And I just sat there and didn't say a word. And Lachille said, "Don't let the door hit you where the source split you."
Oh, wow.
To the three of them.
Oh, my goodness. I kind of vaguely actually remember something about that.
Yeah, it was an interesting time. And it was at that point that the system only had one diabolic in it, and that was me.
Oh, wow. I bet you've got a lot of stories.
Well, that was when Super Saint and Tyrus got bounced, and
Really?
that left only me in the system as a diabolic.
One diabolic? Now that is something I did not know.
And I didn't lord that over the rest of the community. I didn't have any opinion about what our source had decided to do. That was his decision, not mine, based upon the ultimatums that those three had given him. So I said, okay, time for me to just be quiet and sit in the wings, and which is what I did. After that was when Lino and Tasha came into the system. And who was the other one? Ah, yes, it was Moy. It was Moy. Yeah, it was Moy, Tasha, and Lino, and myself. We were the four diabolics.
And when did you become like the title that you have now, the Aperion?
God, that's a good question.
I have lots of good questions.
I'm trying to remember. Let's see. It was during the time when, let's see, we brought Parthenia, Antonia, Domino, and Cassie in as the Diabolics, and that's when I was made the Aperion. And the reason why we only had four greater Diabolics was that myself as the Aperion, what Lachille and I had decided upon was that the four Diabolics, whenever we had an issue that needed to be voted upon, if in the event it came up to a tie vote between the four of them, I could be the tiebreaker. But for the most part, I don't think I ever had to exercise that because the four of them have over the years always been on top of it. They discuss things, they talk about things, and even when, I mean, all four of them have had the ability to tell me that I'm wrong, and I'll listen, and I'll listen, and I will debate with them. Uh, even when I have been told by any one of them that I'm wrong about something, I will debate with them just for the hell of it. We will usually come to an agreement, and 9 times out of 10, the individual who I'm having a debate with about a given subject or a given issue is usually correct. And sometimes it's because on some subjects I can be very myopic, and they have the ability to know that they can put me in my place without any repercussions.
That's good. That's a great leader quality that you have.
It is. Yes.
Yeah, and I have no issue with that because hell, if I were right all the time, then I'd be the one entering the White House in the United States.
That is a fact. I am curious, when did you guys decide to bring the cambions and the ancillary diabolics into play?
Well, the Cambians were first, and the original thought behind that was that they were supposedly diabolics in training. Yours truly was not exactly fond of that particular premise. But at the moment, there is only one Cambion, and that is Katerina. She doesn't participate in the system as much as she used to. We're now in the process of attempting to define a couple of other positions which shall remain nameless at the moment, only because we have been discussing this in the Diabolic Conclave, and there are going to be some definite changes in some of the positions within the system. The creation of a new one, possibly two, and another redefinition of what the Cambions are going to be. The ancillary diabolics technically they have the same powers as a diabolic. And again, to remind everybody out there, the reason for the 4 were for me to be able to break a tie vote. So once the ancillary diabolics are made into greater diabolics, that would mean 6 greater diabolics, which would still give me the ability to break a tie vote.
Right.
Right.
So that's looking forward into the future at some point or another, but who knows when? That's entirely up to the source. Yeah, I mean, the system, I have thoroughly enjoyed my time in the system, even the time when Lachille got pissed off at me.
Well, without a little dysfunction, there can't be function.
That's correct.
That is crazy. I love it. I love it. I got to tell you, I've learned some stuff that I actually was not aware of, and I've been around a long time. So that's pretty wild.
Right. So I know we've covered like a lot, and one of these questions we kind of save for last. Like if you have a favorite story or a historical moment, something that you think all of Progeny should know, but they don't know.
I don't know if they know it or not, but they should have. And in all honesty, I can't give you which one was a favorite because more often than not, everything is my favorite. My friends out there, the people who I've met over the years. I mean, one of the things, and this delves into real life a bit. One of my clan members, who's also in Progeny still, was Amy Lynn Frostbite. So I suppose this is my favorite story. Yes. Amy Lynn Frostbite joined Raven's Claw back in the early days. And she and I used to talk all the time. And her son at the time, who was then 8 years old, 7 years old, or 8 years old, and I used to talk as well. And over the course of the years, we got to be good friends. And her son, his name is Hunter, he wound up coming out here to the Pacific Northwest back in 2017 with his mom and his stepdad and his newly born brother and his older brother and his sister. And they came out to a little town in eastern Washington, and he called me up and he said, I can't stand it. I can't stand it out here. I need something to do. and I told him, I says, well, I have a cellar that needs to be cleaned up. I'll give you a couple of weeks worth of work and I'll pay you for it and whatnot. And he said, okay. So September 1st of 2017, I drove out to this little town in eastern Washington. And for the first time, met his mom, Amy Lynn, in real life, and his stepdad, who I'd met before because he came from that part of the country. And the newborn babe and Hunter and his brother and his sister and all that and whatnot. And Hunter got in my pickup truck and we came back to Seattle. And he has now been living with me straight through to today.
Oh, wow.
He will be 26 years old in February, and he's been with me since he was 18. And also made him my business partner.
Wow. That is a great story.
So he's the kid that came to dinner.
Came to dinner and he just didn't leave.
That's right. Now he is a fine, outstanding young man, and he is as much family as anybody could be. So yeah, that's my favorite story about Second Life.
Isn't it amazing how Second Life and Progeny has impacted each and every one of our lives through the years?
Absolutely.
And it just rolls into our real lives, and we make such awesome connections.
Yeah,
Uh,
and it's like meeting Arthurine and Dunkel and their new baby. And one day we drove down to Oregon to oh, what was that? I think it's a Five Guys hamburger joint.
Oh, that's where I named my son. Five Guys.
I mean, so yes, over the course of the years, I have met many people from Second Life, and it's enhanced my life, which is a wonderful thing. So Second Life has a lot of great treasures about it. And I can honestly say that I've not really ever been upset by anything that's occurred in here. I've been a little pissed off about a few things, but hey, what the hell are
I
you
get
going to do?
I get angry on several days, and Soraya has to talk me off the edge.
yeah, I tell you, it's funny. When I met Felly, just real short story here. It was really funny. When I met Felly, when I had left Second Life for a couple of years, and when I came back, I stayed really quiet for a long time, and so I became a whole lot more active in PV after being quiet. And when I met Felly, she just kind of fell out of the sky into my lap, and she messaged.
I do that.
And
Yep.
it's really crazy how our relationship has evolved into where we're at right now. And I got to tell you, you're not wrong at all about how the people impact your life that you meet. Uh, she's an amazing, smart, funny lady, and it's just I wouldn't trade her
Let's
for
hear it.
nothing.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, and I just love her to death and honestly cannot wait to meet her in person. So, yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
All right, Soraya, you want to close us up?
Sure do. We have definitely, definitely learned a lot today with our responses from the source. And a huge thank you to our Aperion Oberon for coming on and sharing bits of history
You're
and
welcome.
personal stories with us. And it's actually amazing today. And
Yes,
I'm
thank
super
you so
excited.
much. Thank
Yes.
you. We want to ask the realm too. There's many of you out there holding much of our history as well. Let us know. We can talk about it, or you can also just get it to Arch Rashiel at the museum, or even to Diabolic Domino for the wiki. A lot of our history is gone, so like, let's get it together. Let's get it out there for everybody to share.
Oh, absolutely. I really think we're missing a lot of history here, and I think it's just something that a lot of the new players would like to hear. So thank you, Realm of Progeny, for watching another The More You Know podcast, History Part 1. And yes, there's more history to come, so stay tuned. And you have been with the voice and the Felly, and with words from our source and our special guest, the Aperion Oberon. Remember to like and subscribe, because you never know what will come out of the shadows next.